Not every market is good to own rental properties. In fact, some markets are really bad for owning rental properties. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some simple ways that you can see if your market or the market you're looking to invest in is good for rental properties. Assuming you want to make a good amount of positive cash flow on top of all your expenses, assuming you want to invest in nice, safe areas, and assuming you want appreciation, meaning you want to buy properties to go up in value, this video is for you. There are four main things that I think you should consider when you're looking at investing rental properties in a certain city or a certain area. Before I go into those four things that you want to consider, I do want to make a note that I always think it's best to invest locally. I like to support my local area, but also I like to be able to drive to my assets. I like to be able to see the properties grow. I like to be able to talk to the tenants if necessary. I like just to be able to be local and watch my properties and make sure they're getting well taken care of. Now, if that's possible and you meet all this criteria in the market you live in, I think that's the best avenue to go down. However, if you want to own real estate and own rental properties and your market doesn't work, then for sure do it virtually or do it in another market. I just always say look at your local market first, because it's just nice to be able to be around that area and to know it really well because you live there. But if it's not possible to own rental properties, or it's not, good for the pocketbook or good for your business to own rental properties in your city, then look nationally or in other states or other cities, but start where you live. The first criteria that you want to evaluate is local government and municipality laws, or even state laws. I never get into politics on this channel, and I'm not going to get into blue versus red or anything like that. I'm just talking green on this channel. We're talking about a good way to make money. That being said, the simple fact of the matter is red states are usually a little better to own rental properties in. I'm not one of those people that wants to live in a state that landlords have all the power. And I obviously don't want to own rental properties in a place where renters have all the power. I think you should have a fair relationship with your tenant. You should treat your tenant fairly, and they should treat you fairly in return. And that's usually what we have. We have great relationships with our tenants, but certain states aim one way or the other. I personally would not own any rental properties in California or in Oregon or New York. Those states give a lot of power to the tenant. I also don't want to own in a state that just lets landlords do whatever they want, because there's a lot of bad landlords out there. Landlords can get a bad rap because some of them take advantage of their tenant. So I like to have a market that has a good mixture. I'm going to talk about St. Louis at the end and explain why St. Louis is a great rental market and why it fits all four of the categories. Just know that certain laws in certain areas in certain states lean more towards the tenant, and some of them lean more towards the landlord. I want to be fair with my tenants, but I don't want them to be able to take advantage of me. Before I talk about the second thing to look for, make sure to hit that like button. Trying to provide as much value as I can, and hitting that like button really helps. Another big thing is to look at the stability of the market. Having a market that doesn't go too high or doesn't go too low is great for owning rental properties, because you know that your property is going to consistently have a value and consistently be rented. Markets like Phoenix, they're awesome to be a part of if you're flipping or if you're wholesaling or if you're willing to ride that wave up, but then they crash really, really quickly, and that's where landlords can get hurt. A lot of the Midwest and a lot of the South is usually a little bit more stable. Everybody kind of knows that the coasts get hit pretty hard when it comes to crashes or dips, and the coasts go up really quick when the market's hot. I like to have things be a little bit more stable, and usually the further inside you get, the more stable it is. That's why most people in those markets that I talked about in the coast, in California or Oregon, New York, most landlords and most investors own rentals in the Midwest or in the South or the Southeast. They don't own in their current state because they know that it's not the best for laws, and it's not very stable. It's very volatile. I like things to be simple. I like things to be smooth and be pretty steady, and that's really what you get in the Midwest. The third thing to look at is look at the standard of living. There are things you can look up online that talk about the standard of living, but it's obviously much more expensive to live in San Francisco or live in Seattle than it is to live in Memphis or live in Knoxville or live in St. Louis. So having a market that things are affordable just makes it easier to own rental properties because your taxes and all your expenses and everything that you're having to pay for owning that property is reasonable, and they don't fluctuate and go up like crazy. Like taxes and just general living out in the coast or in some of these areas that are super high priced just doesn't make it good for owning rental properties, because as a rental owner, I'm fine to pay my real estate taxes that I have to pay. I'm fine to pay to maintain the property. I'm fine to take care of the house and take care of my tenant, but I don't want it to be so much that I don't cash flow. Speaking of cash flow, that's the fourth thing you need to look at. Some people don't worry as much about cash flow, and they just more worry about making their payments and riding the appreciation or riding the value of the property as it goes up. I want to make sure my properties cash flow before I buy them. A good way to quickly see if a house is potentially going to cash flow is take the value of the house and multiply it by 0.008. It's a basic kind of way to look at the 1% rule. You just need to see what your income is going to be and what your general expenses are going to be. Now, you can do that by looking on Zillow and looking at the Zillow rent estimate as well as the home values estimate. But we all know Zillow is not 100% accurate, but is a good way to look and get a gauge to see if there is potential. Then after that, you need to look at to see what the house is actually going to be worth by looking at recent comparable sales, and you need to look at what the house is actually going to rent for by, again, looking at houses that recently rented on the market or houses that are for rent. And here's what your cash flow formula is once you figure out what the house is going to be renting for. You take your rent minus your mortgage, minus your insurance, because you have to pay insurance for owning rental properties, minus your vacancy. You need to put money aside for when the property is vacant because it's not always going to be rented, minus your property taxes. You're going to pay taxes at the end of the year, minus your property management if you're paying another property management to manage the company, minus your maintenance. You're going to have to maintain the property. So if you take your rent minus those 6 expenses, that will let you know how much you're going to cash flow at the end of everything. And we look at $200 to $400 a month net cash flow to make sure that we're getting income coming in as well as being able to cover all of our expenses. All right, let's look at St. Louis. It's my local market. It's where I own my properties, and I know it very well. I'm going to explain to you why St. Louis is perfect, one of the best markets in the entire country to own rental properties. The 2 biggest counties in St. Louis are St. Louis County and St. Charles County. St. Charles County is right outside St. Louis County. St. Louis County is a little bit more blue. Let's say they lean a little bit more left, so the laws there kind of protect the tenants a little bit more, which is fine. I don't mind that at all. I own a ton of properties in St. Louis County. But St. Charles County, right outside of that, leans a little bit more red. So I own a lot of property in St. Charles County as well. So for example, in St. Louis County, if there was some type of law or something passed that the government or local agencies gave money to tenants to pay rent, I would benefit from that because the government is helping out the tenant, and hopefully that rent is going to make its way to me. However, laws are a little tighter, evictions are a little tighter, so if a tenant is taking advantage of me, I might have more trouble getting them out. Juxtapose that to St. Charles County, probably not going to be as many laws or regulations put forward to help the tenant out because it's more landlord friendly. So if a tenant is taking advantage of me and not paying rent and trying to screw me over, I'm more likely to be able to evict them and utilize my power to get them out and get a good tenant in place. Like I've said a million times, and I'll say a million times more, I love my tenants and I like to have great relationships with them. Obviously, there's bad landlords and there's bad tenants out there as well. I like to treat my tenants fairly, and as long as they treat me fairly in return, we have a great relationship. St. Louis is a pretty steady market. It's not growing like crazy like, you see Nashville or Denver or on the coast or Phoenix, like I keep using those examples, because especially Phoenix, back in 2003, 4, 5, 6, it shot up like crazy, and it was hit hardest more than almost any market. In the last year, Phoenix house values have gone up close to 30%. That's crazy growth. That's really cool because if I owned in Phoenix, my properties have gone up a ton in value. But if and when there's a shift in the market, Phoenix is going to get hurt really hard. So in St. Louis, house values have gone up about 12% in the last year. So still super great growth. I was able to take advantage of that. My properties went up in value, so obviously that benefits me. But it's a little more steady, a little more maintainable, a little more sustainable. So when it does shift a little bit, it's probably going to get hit less. That's shown over and over in time. Smaller towns, Midwest towns don't get the crazy ups, but then they also don't get the crazy downs. I'd rather have a steadily rising market than a market that's super volatile, because I'm not going to be able to time everything perfect, and I just don't want to deal with that volatility. I want to have nice houses in a nice area and just have some stability. The standard of living. Living in St. Louis is a pretty affordable town. It's a pretty affordable place. Lots of people that are working virtually and have jobs in California or Nevada or on the East Coast are moving to the Midwest and moving to St. Louis because they're making enough money to live in those other cities and those other towns and states that is higher cost of living, but their money goes a lot further. You know, making $100,000 in St. Louis, that's pretty good. You make $100,000 downtown San Francisco, that's not very good. So just having a market that is, you know, affordable for people to live and pay rent and pay their taxes and pay their grocery bills every month and do everything, you know, that goes along with living. I like to be in those, you know, stable, not lower end, but a little more affordable markets. Cash flow. That 1% rule I talked a little bit about earlier, and have a video up here that explains a little bit better if you'd like to check that out. St. Louis can beat that 1% rule. Meaning if I have a mortgage on a property for $130,000 a month, 1% of that should be $1,300 a month. If I have a $130,000 mortgage and I'm getting $1,300 a month in rent, I should cash flow. However, in St. Louis, that $130,000 mortgage house, I can usually rent for $1,400 to $1,500 a month. So I can beat that 1% rule. Some markets, like the markets I keep mentioning over and over, the volatile markets on the coast, they don't even come close to that 1% rule. If you decided that the city you live in does not work, use the criteria I've given you in this video and evaluate markets. I would suggest looking at the Midwest, the South, or the Southeast for markets that meet all that criteria and that are a little more landlord friendly. The biggest thing you're going to want to know investing virtually, investing in another market, is having a good feel for the market, but having boots on the ground you trust. If you can't drive to your properties every single day, you don't have to, but if you don't have the ability to do that because it's a flight away or several hour drive away, you need to have boots on the ground that you trust. You need to have a property management company that you know is going to manage the property well and good tenants in place. That's why it's a little scary to me to invest in other markets, because you don't have that. You either have to FaceTime somebody or travel a few times a year to see your properties to really see how they're being taken care of. I can drive to all my properties in 15 minutes, maybe half an hour, so I know if I have questions if they're getting taken care of. However, it doesn't always work in every market, so just have boots on the ground that you trust or local people that you know are going to keep an eye on your property, and you should be fine. If you got any value out of this video, make sure you hit that like button if you didn't earlier, and also subscribe to this channel. I try to give as much free quality content as I can. See you on the next one.